Gary Blowers.
Axe, good to see you. Good to see you.
We're a long way away from Birmingham, aren't we?
From where it all started, yeah. Aston Stags, here we go.
And what's really interesting is if you look to your left.
Oh, Stag. Never far away. Never far away.
So,
I think I've still got the kit, actually, that we should have probably returned. But yeah, I've still got it.
Should have worn it today.
Should have done, actually, yeah. Should have done.
I've got my hoodie. Yeah, the blue one, if you remember that.
Of course.
Oh
How could I forget? They were the days.
We have got a lot to talk about.
We have. Let's get to it.
So, Power and Destiny podcast, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. I've really been looking forward to this one because we've known each other now, 15 years? It's been maybe a bit more than that now.
Yeah, closer to 20.
Oh my gosh.
We're showing our age. Showing our age.
You haven't aged a bit, mate.
Yeah. All right, let's not go there. We're not even 1 minute into the podcast. We already attacked the hair. Yeah, thanks very much.
We've got so much to talk about. Now, we're going to try and keep it honed towards, obviously, the journey, this 20-year journey.
Yep.
We've personally had so many times that our journeys overlapped.
Yep.
Whether it's been in the same industry, whether it's been entrepreneurs, whether it's moving away from the UK to the Middle East. There's been so many interesting kind of touch points that we've had.
Yep.
And although you've come to the UAE and I went to Saudi, we've again crossed over somehow again. And this time we're going to unpack it all today over the next kind of 45 minutes. And hopefully anyone watching today is going to get a real understanding about how you not only set up your first company, brought it out to the Middle East, but you then tore it all down and started again in a completely new industry, something that was just a passion project of yours, raised $10 million more recently, and are one of the hottest prospects in terms of tech companies in the UAE and, in my opinion, the Middle East, especially in your sector. And I can't wait for the audience to actually hear this story. And again, for us to frame everything through the lens of power and destiny. So,
absolutely. You framed that very well. Thank you.
My first question is, do you believe in destiny?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And whilst admittedly I'm not the most religious of people, I absolutely believe in destiny, or maybe you might refer to it as fate. And I think things have a way of working themselves out. And I really do believe that you get out of life, whether that's business or relationships or football or sport or anything, you get out what you put in. So if the input is good, the output will be good. And if the input is, less than good or subpar, then guess what? The output will follow. So yeah, I think from a destiny perspective, I think, yeah, absolutely. Everyone has a path, and maybe it takes people a little bit longer than others, or some people are quicker than others to find their path. And you mentioned for me and kind of the passion that turned into a business around health and wellness. I guess that was destiny for me.
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning when it come to our meeting, actually, back at Aston Uni, where obviously we played football together, we spent time together. Yep. But let's talk about before that. Now, you actually took, I think, a year out before you joined uni, right?
Yep.
So explain to me, you've just finished GCSEs, you've gone into A-levels, you took a year out, and then you came to uni. Like, explain that part of your life.
Yeah, so I think looking back, and to be honest, it's not something I've really done much of, so it's interesting to kind of come onto the podcast today and kind of take time to reflect, and I think that's something that people should do more often. I know I'm guilty of not doing it enough, so yeah, looking back, growing up, ultimately I was an only child, so I was very independent from the get-go, and with that, I was always very quick to create pathways, very quick to create goals, and I wasn't dependent on others to kind of set my path or set my goals. And very early on in life, discovered a passion for football. Played to a pretty high standard. Growing up, region level, county level. Played for the Norwich City Academy when I was 12, 13. And had trials there, and just used football really as the vehicle to meet people and push myself. Academically, I was always very fortunate that I was good at most, if not all, topics. I got good grades, or excellent grades in GCSE. I got good grades at A level, and in my final year of school, I was selected to be head boy back in England. That's in some schools that's a thing. I think in the US they may call it valedictorian or something like that. And it was a tremendous honour, but it was also a lot of extra work. And A levels are hard enough. Becoming 17, 18 years old, entering adulthood is hard enough. And I think I just had enough, to be honest, of education and following the generic pathway. I wanted to kind of just start setting my own course. And I think that really became a theme, was already a theme, but then absolutely became a theme. So I decided to move to Spain. I wanted to play football still. I wanted to coach football ideally, but that didn't work out because, I didn't speak Spanish yet. So that was a prohibiting factor. But yeah, I moved to Spain, got a couple of jobs there, learned, the language the best I could, made some tremendous contacts, some of whom I'm still in touch with today, again, through football. And I think it also then kind of refreshed my mind to think, right, I do need to go back. I do need to do something. And going to Aston seemed like the logical next step. But even then, I didn't really go to university kind of with the intent on being kind of fully immersed in education. I went there to kind of set a new pathway, and we can come on to that next, I guess.
Yeah, so talk me through that decision-making process though. So you finished A levels. Why Spain? Like what triggered Spain?
It's a good question. I've never really thought about it. I think one of the regrets I have actually is I didn't. I got the opportunity to take scholarships in the US to go to university and play football in 3 or 4 different universities, and I didn't pursue it aggressively enough. And I think that's when really I should have put my foot on the gas and accelerated more and double down on training and nutrition and really focus. But I didn't get pushed, if I'm honest. And I didn't know what it was all about going to the US. It sounded like a good idea, but I got an injury in that last season. That kind of started to throw some doubt in there. Like, what if I go to the US and play football and then get injured? What then have I got? So having not pursued that, I wanted to stay kind of playing football and stay active. And Spain just seemed like a good test. And I think that really is, again, a common theme. Like I wanted to test myself in a totally different environment to the UK, where the language was a barrier, where I didn't really know anyone. And it was a great test, and I think I did all right.
It's really interesting because obviously 20 years on, looking back at it, we have a slightly different perspective to look back and say, well, actually you kind of stepped into an uncomfortable place on purpose.
Yep.
I don't see that a lot in today's young kind of community or people coming. And I've always asked myself that question, why? Why are we not stepping into that uncomfortable space? And your personality, obviously knowing you so well, shows why you turned up in the UAE. If we fast forward, with your business. So you even though maybe you didn't know, but your destiny was actually like, taking yourself into a place where you would have felt out of your depth, and that was a kind of motivating factor. Do you think that was the kind of driving force throughout your kind of different decision-making points?
Yeah, I think I often feel my best when I'm least comfortable. In an unknown territory, an unknown country, an unknown continent, and even building businesses that you don't really know what it's going to become or what it's capable of becoming. So yeah, I think a lot of people seek comfort, and actually I actively seek discomfort. That's the that's kind of the way I get the best out of myself. So yeah, whether it was going to Spain, obviously during our degree we had to do a year in business, and I chose to go and work on Wall Street in New York, and again it was an uncomfortable experience, but man, I learned so much, and again made so many great friends and contacts, and really shaped me as a young adult, and really charted the course for the rest of my life, I think.
So that brings us on nicely onto the kind of next part of unpacking, which is, let's talk about some stories of when you've had like a major up, like you felt like, okay, or major discomfort or something that's gone totally wrong. In the early part. I mean, we'll move on to the marketing agency and post university and stuff, but in the early part of your life, something that was like a major up and down that you've had, and how you felt during those moments.
Yeah. I think the first one that comes to mind is before I even started the first business. So back in New York in 2008, part of the 12-month program was studying for your Series 7 and Series 66, which were the two licensing exams you had to pass in order to, officially and legally trade and buy and sell stocks and recommend stocks to other people. And the Series 7 back then, I'm sure it still is now, but it's a 360 question multiple choice exam that covers investment strategy, investment law, all of these, crazy things. And the average for those that take the exam, it was 2 out of every 3 fail. And you had to get 70% or more to pass, and it was just binary. 70% or above, you passed. Anything below, you failed. And the average pass score was 73%. So it was like a very slim chance that you would pass. And then ultimately, if you didn't pass, you basically lost your job and go and choose a different career. So me and my friend, Ryan, we studied very hard together, pushed each other, were very competitive. I kind of found almost like a brother, I guess, that I never really had to compete against, and in a friendly way, and have good banter and work very hard as well. Go to the gym together, even oftentimes he would share some of his lunch with me because his mum, he lived at home still. His mum made these classic, New York American sandwiches where significantly more filling than bread, so he would give me a bit of the filling, which was nice. But we sat the exam the same day, and we both passed with flying colors, and that was a real high. Like at that point in life, I don't think I'd ever achieved anything so significant, even though I was proud of being head boy and everything else. But this was a real test. Like there was every expectation that at least one, if not both of us, would fail. So yeah, like ultimate euphoria, if you will, in terms of I guess academic test. Or test of intelligence and test of willpower to study for 4 or 5 months. And it was amazing. And obviously we celebrated and whatnot. And then that was a Friday. Sunday morning, I wake up to a phone call, and my dad answers the other end of the line, and they're in England, obviously, and my grandfather had passed away. So, and I remember speaking to him on the Friday, and joking, and he was very happy, very bubbly character always. And this exam that I did was a 7-hour exam, and I remember him joking, saying, I don't know how you did it. I couldn't have done even 7 minutes, and laugh and joke. And yeah, that was the last time I ever spoke to him. So yeah, that was there couldn't have been a quicker and darker crash from top to bottom. And then yeah, obviously then flew back home and went through the funeral process as you would. So yeah, that was horrible. Took and obviously nothing more important in life than family, but absolutely I guess put immediately put things into perspective and said, right, what do I really want to do here? And I think that probably began the idea of again charting a different path and charting my own. So but yeah, that was a very quick, very high, as far as market crashes go, that was like instant. So yeah, that was definitely the first example that springs to mind.
And is that why you didn't pursue then a career, for example, in trading? Or because I mean it's obviously very lucrative. We've gone from doing, obviously starting the degree, taking the year out, going to New York, starting on Wall Street. You would have seen all the glamour or not, the money.
Yeah.
I mean, New York doesn't look as good now. Back then, it would have been. It was nicer, much nicer.
Yeah.
But you saw the money, you saw people, the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Why didn't that attract you? And why did you then go down back to the route after finishing university now, and starting, the marketing, the branding and marketing agency? Like, how did that end up happening?
Yeah, I think with Wall Street and investment banking, it is a momentum game. I think I definitely lost the momentum then. I I went on to then sit the Series 66 with my friend at the same time, and he passed it and I failed it. And I don't think I'd ever failed an exam before, or got below an A, or wasn't me. So yeah, obviously I was sad. I was grieving, and I think it's natural. But yeah, I think it lost a bit of momentum and a little bit of desire on that, and also knowing it was only a 12-month thing anyway, because it was temporary. It was a placement year for university. Ryan, who I sat the Series 7 with and ultimately passed the 66 in the end, he's still working for JP Morgan Chase. He's doing very, very well, and has carved out an incredible career in finance. But I think very quickly I realized that wasn't my pathway, and I wanted to build. I wanted to challenge myself in what I could create, and just naturally I met a few people in New York, and my business partner, who I started my first business with, Dilesh, he was in Madrid, and he managed to get a client, a big client that he was doing his placement year for, and just seemed to be you come back to destiny. It seemed to be the path that we were destined to be on, and we actually tried to start a business before the placement year, but the university wouldn't accept us as starting a business. That wasn't viewed as acceptable, ironically, by a business school. So yeah, we had to go and get a year in industry, but I think it was not the challenge that either of us were looking for, and in the end we ended up pursuing the challenge we were after, and that kind of took us into our final year, and then many years beyond that.
And how did you identify that was a pathway? Because I mean, again, we've talked. You keep mentioning pathway for younger people who are actually going to be watching this, and I know that there's a lot of younger people who will most likely be watching this.
Yep.
It's very difficult, to understand what pathway to take.
Absolutely.
And how to take that pathway. I remember at university, I was very driven from an entrepreneurial perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, football was massive.
Yep.
But outside of football, actually, I was teaching myself how to use different, photo editing softwares. And those skills I use even to today.
Yep.
Whether a video, anything creative, I was spending my time doing that. And I realized I actually remember I won my first client, my marketing branding client, at university from a lecturer.
That's cool.
Because a lecturer had a side business, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
And it was the weirdest business. Mm-hmm. So they used to live in Tunbridge Wells, his family. And their side family business was taking people on ghost trails.
Fair enough. Yeah,
through these random places, right, where they would say that it was haunted, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know how I found out he needed a website.
Yeah.
or an animation. So what happened? And he said he said something, and I was like, oh, you know what, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I sold him a website. I made him this Ghost Legends website because it was like called Ghost Legends. So I built a brand for him called Ghost Legends and this really cool, scary kind of intro website.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I taught myself how to do it whilst I was making it.
Yep. 100%.
And so again, I never thought to myself, oh, you know what, I'm going to go and create an agency or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll share my story on the agency side, and then we can talk about yours, because I think this is where our overlaps really come in. Even before I went to university, I know we both studied obviously marketing, but before I went to university, marketing and branding was just like a really interesting thing to me, especially at A levels. I was obsessed with advertising and car advertising.
Right.
And during A levels, again, spare time, once I'd learned how to use PowerPoint, I actually designed a campaign for Honda. And I designed this campaign for Honda. And I was so desperate for Honda to actually take it.
Yeah.
I was trying to sell it to them at like 17, but I had no idea. So I rang up Honda, it was probably their like after sales dealership, right? I called him up and I said, look, I've made a campaign for Honda, which I think is going to be awesome.
Yep.
I came up with a tagline. I did everything. I was like, how can I speak to somebody here? Like, who do I speak to here? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And after a few phone calls, someone said to me, look, we don't deal with marketing inside. We have an agency. The moment that person said the word agency, that was it.
Yeah. That's it.
So agency became this thing, which I was like, oh, this agency manages the marketing. Really interesting. And, you know, I always felt like Honda took my idea because I emailed it to them, but, you know, and just used a bit of it. I told myself that just to make myself feel good afterwards. But so that's where I came across the agency world.
Yep.
And I don't remember who it was on the phone, obviously, but that's what inspired me to say, I need to understand who an agency is or work for an agency or something like this. And then obviously went to university and then set up an agency myself.
Yeah.
Why the agency? How did that come about? Why did that come about?
I think one of the things I've always been good at is building connections and building a network and ultimately building teams. And I think Dilesh, who was my business partner in the agency, I think if I'm honest, it was more of his skill set. Like he was the creative brain without question. He recently got married, and seeing his wedding, like you can see the attention to detail is insane. And if he's watching, congratulations again, D. So yeah, I think it was really more a case of, I saw he had this kind of creative superpower, raw talent, and I knew that I had talents of my own, and they were complementary, and by and large they were for a very long time. So I think it was more of a case of I wanted to build a business, and I think D or Dilesh, he was very much the creative driving force behind all of the client work and client projects, until we went and recruited and built a team and brought in people who were more qualified than us, more experienced. So I think our first, one of our first recruits, Gav, I'm going back now, Gav, Sai, Sunny, like they're all immensely talented, design professionals. They still are to this day and have gone on to be very successful. But we were able to put together a very incredible team very quickly. And I think that's really what enabled us to compete with the big boys. And the agency world is brutal. It's very competitive. It's very much who it's very in the UK, it's very London centric, or it certainly was. I think it's changed a little bit now. Birmingham, Manchester are a bit more it's kind of decentralized a little bit, but I would imagine it's still very much London is the powerhouse. And here was this, little agency startup in a studio in Digbeth, and we used to walk from our office to our lectures and back in the final year. So I think, like you said, you build as you learn. We used to design campaigns the same, build web pages in Dreamweaver back in the day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we didn't know what we were doing. We were probably terrible at it in reality, but it was good enough.
Yeah.
And we actually knew, and through that very rapid learning process, we knew a lot more than most other people. And there's a lot of businesses, whether small businesses, startups, big businesses. And what we found was even the biggest of businesses, our biggest clients, they couldn't do the basics. I think we made, in the first couple of years, we made more money selling flash banners, right, than anything. Why? Because no one knew how to use Flash. I'm not surprised. It was a pain in the backside to use, but yeah, we that it's just those little things I think that added up and enabled us to grow a business, and then that took us in a number of different places. Obviously London and clients in London in the end, and then clients in Europe. Our biggest client was in Madrid, and then eventually clients out here in the Middle Eastern region, starting in Kuwait and ultimately ending up here in Dubai.
So let's go into that now then. Dubai. You're in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to family, you're speaking to D, you're speaking to... Why Dubai?
So through a contact, he made me aware of an opportunity to work on a project for Kuwait Airways with a management consultancy that was based here in Dubai. I had a quick phone call, told them what we did. They told me what they did. They're like, this is our skill set. This project's kind of brand and design led. That's not our skill set. We're like, well, that's bread and butter for us. Would you fancy joining us on the project? Yeah, why not? Like, what have we got to lose? So off I go, fly out to Dubai, meet them, fly to Kuwait, start the project, and then, over a series of, I guess, 4 to 6 months, flying between Birmingham, Dubai, Kuwait, learning very quickly about, Kuwait and Kuwaiti culture. I had been to Dubai previously only once in 2010. We're now talking 2013, 2014 kind of time. And didn't really have much knowledge of the region. Obviously had never lived here, only visited once on holiday. And I think it was a very accelerated learning curve working in Kuwait, but the time spent with the management consultancy and then more time spent in Dubai, I think even now I don't think many people come to Dubai and do not enjoy it. There really is something for everybody. And again, coming from the UK where it was grey and cold and wet, to here where it was always sunny and bright, it was had a huge impact on your mind and your mindset and just the overall quality of life. So flying back and forth, I'd always, not enjoy landing back in the UK and having to put layers back on and, walk back through rainy streets and whatnot. And eventually I said to my, at the time, girlfriend who I met at Aston, Michelle, we'd been together since university and whatnot. I was like, I made a list actually on the last flight home before, suggesting this idea. I made a list of like 25 reasons we should move to Dubai. Wrote them all down, put them in my pocket, brought the conversation up with her. I said, I think we should, really consider moving to Dubai. And I was just about to get the list out and she's like, yeah, I agree. I was like, oh, wow, that's, didn't see that one coming. Didn't expect that. I thought I'd have to at least get through 10, 15 points, but no, she, credit to her. She was right behind it. And we moved out here in 2015 to continue running the design marketing agency business. Did that for a couple more years when we got here. And then, that was when I decided to really pursue something I was more passionate about, which is level.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go into that. And obviously we met in Dubai, didn't we? Then I remember that's one of the times we after university, that was the first time we kind of crossed over.
Correct.
After uni. And that was that was an interesting time even for us as an agency, because I think I had just moved to Saudi maybe a year or so before. When did you move out to Dubai?
2015.
2015,
Yeah.
so that's it. So it was pretty much the exact same time.
Yep.
2014 is when we started to basically set up in Saudi,
Yep.
and that's when we started that. So I remember being in the region, and obviously then you came out as well. So putting the agency to the side, because we can talk about this, we're going to need this episode's going to have to go on for such a long time.
Yeah.
But putting the agency, so you came out, you grew the agency,
Mm-hmm.
you were doing well with it. Obviously, it's a business that you'd given 10 years of your life to, maybe a bit more even, you know?
This point, coming out here 6 years. So yeah, 6 years, and then it got to just shy of 9 in total. Yeah.
So you've given the best part
Good chunk of time. Yeah.
you know,
all of my adult life to date. Yeah.
and then suddenly you decide to just close it. Now, that's pretty radical from a business perspective, because anybody watching who knows building a business, you think about all of the value that you've tried to create or did create, or the benefit maybe that you hadn't extracted out of that. So to just suddenly say, we're not doing this anymore. Talk me through that decision-making process, and why you, number one, did it, but also the fear, the unknown, stepping again into the unknown.
Yeah.
What that happened, like how did you convince your family? You know, what was that like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there's a couple of points here. So number one, you know, when you build a business, you know, from the outside looking in, you know, everything looks good, right? And the reality of building any business is that it's very rarely always good. And it was hard. You know, we are again competing against mega agencies, you know, in you know, some of the biggest markets in the world. Obviously Dubai was booming in 2015, or certainly growing to the, you know, incredible place that it is now. And yeah, there were I think just a series of bumps in the road. It's just like, is this really worth it? You know, we had this joint venture partnership here with the management consultancy that I mentioned, and it didn't work for no one particular reason or no one's particular fault. It just didn't work, and we came out here on the premise that was going to be how we would grow the business, and it didn't work. It didn't work out as anywhere near as planned, and here in this market in UAE and Saudi, if you're not well capitalized, you will struggle quite quickly. And that was the reality for that business, is we were not as capitalized as we needed to be in the event that the joint venture partnership didn't work. So then stepping out of that, we were like, oh, you know, it's almost like starting again. And I think the thing that there was two things. Number one, like I said, you know, Dilesh was always the creative kind of driving force behind the business. I had then started to realize what I liked and what I didn't. And the agency world, the agency model, the agency business was just not my cup of tea. It didn't light a fire in me, so to speak. So that was already kicking in. That kind of like doubt was already there. And then secondly, and most importantly, working in that environment. And actually I met a lady last week from an agency here in Dubai, who reached out to me because she's setting up like different wellness initiatives within her group. But you know, we talk about the very real, not even threat or danger, the reality of burnout in the agency world. But actually, you can now apply it to just the working world or the corporate world. And I burnt myself out, you know, working extremely long days, you know, including weekends, not really having much of a personal life, and certainly not giving the time to Michelle that I should have done. And also not taking care of myself. And I think, you know, well-being wise, fitness wise, and that's always been like the number one priority for me is movement, you know, physical activity, sport, and therefore all of the positive benefits that come off the back of that. And having lost sight of that, and burning out, that was kind of like the icing on the cake, really. And it's like, no, I'd had enough. So it wasn't really a difficult decision. It wasn't a difficult discussion. I think, again, Dilesh was very supporting of me stepping away. I think he probably, in hindsight, may have carried on with it a little bit longer himself. But for whatever reason, we just decided that was the natural end. And I think actually it's quite hard for people to let go of businesses because they become so emotionally attached.
Absolutely.
But I was done. And I was so clear on what I wanted to do next. It was like nothing was going to get in my way and stop me. So, and yeah, like I said before, like once I have an idea in mind or a pathway, then, I'm going to run down it.
But it's interesting you say that, because a lot of the time people are operating failing businesses all the time. They can't step away with it because there's social pressures.
Yeah.
What, did you have social pressures at that point?
Maybe, but I didn't feel them. Again, I was so...
But is that because you felt you were in control of, again, coming back to that power and destiny?
Yeah.
What, you felt you were in control, right? Or did you not feel? Were you out of control?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think I'd lost control of the things that mattered the most to me, which was, good health, well-being, being the best version of myself. I'd lost that. The business had kind of like sucked me into this repeat cycle of...
And was it like a point though? Like, do you remember
February
point?
February 14th, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, we finished some projects for a client of ours. We launched them that day, went very well. It was the first Valentine's Day after Michelle and I had got married. And we went out for dinner, we ordered food, but I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't eat. I couldn't look her in the eye. I was just so exhausted. And really that was my own fault, right? I'd allowed work to overtake my priorities, my health and well-being priorities. And, you think, and I posted about this recently on LinkedIn, I devalued or undervalued sleep. I'd almost devalued everything that had allowed me to be the best version of myself for the longest of times. And yeah, that was where I really hit the wall. And I was like, nah, enough's enough, and I look back at pictures in those dates and my eyes are black, black from just exhaustion. And I was stupid. That was
but
in hindsight.
But we're told to work.
Absolutely.
This is glorified.
Yeah.
If we're not doing 80 to 120 hours a week, you're not going to be successful. You've got to work more than that other person, your competitors. If you spend more hours working, that's what is being fed into a lot of people
100%.
in business at this moment of time.
Yeah, and back then, and it is slightly changing now, but back then, like working over 100 hours a week was like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And sleeping as little as you could, staying in the office as late as you could, and getting there as early as you could was also another, badge of honor. And yeah, I couldn't have got it more wrong, that in reality.
Until recently, I battled this thing personally.
Yeah.
You feel guilty taking time off.
Yeah.
Like if you're not working, you feel
not even
guilty.
time off, like leaving before 8 p.m. You know what I mean? Like leaving before 8 p.m., like not having put 12 hours, a solid shift in. I think it took me too long to realize there was a difference between quantity and quality. And I'm definitely more, more centered around quality now, in terms of quality of the time I put into work, quality of the time I put into, Michelle and the boys, and health, fitness, well-being. Like you have to do things well. Otherwise, again, if you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out.
So let's go into this now.
Yeah.
So the next business, you've stayed in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
You've launched a technology business that revolves around health and fitness.
Yeah.
It took a couple of shapes, and it didn't come without its troubles.
Yeah.
But you went, maybe, if I can put it like this, from turning the lights off in that business to closing a $10 million round in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Let's go into that.
Yeah.
How did you become the hottest health, well-being technology platform, in essence, in the UAE, and arguably GCC in some capacity?
Yeah.
How did you do it?
I think I think the fundamental difference between, the previous business and this one is genuine passion and genuine belief in a long-term cause or objective or vision. I think coming from a brand and design agency background, we used to get paid to create visions and purposes and, brand strategies for other companies. But if, in my view, and having been on the other side of the table, like, if you have to pay someone else to come up with your vision and your purpose, then it's not that real. It's not that authentic. And I think that was the difference here, is that, I started Level back in 2017 with a tremendous amount of support. Graham, one of our co-founders, he was very early on willing and able to fund the exploration of this concept, and bring connections and bring angel investors. Like, we wouldn't be here without him. Dinesh then came and joined, the business as well. So he brought his creative force to it. Oren, my best mate from back home, I've known him for 30 odd years. He came and joined the business. So, it was authentic in that the vision was very, very simple, which was to build a product or a platform or a community where health and well-being was the priority, right? Whatever we do, we help people live healthier, happier lives, like, full stop. And it doesn't actually matter what we do. We can do this, we can do that, we can sell this service, we can create this content. That's almost irrelevant. But what's the most important point is that it contributes to people progressing with their health and well-being, as opposed to allowing it to naturally deteriorate. Because, whether we like it or not, as we get older, your health and well-being will deteriorate. And the older you get, the more rapid it will. So I think that was the main difference, is really having that authenticity, if you will, in terms of purpose and vision and passion for what we're building, and having no specific end in mind to it. Because I think a lot of businesses that raise money, they raise it to IPO or they raise it to exit and make a lot of money. With this, that was never the case. It was, a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are suffering from poor health or, mental well-being, physical well-being, social well-being. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of burnout, a lot of obesity in this part of the world. A lot of that is avoidable.
And how's Level Wellbeing actually addressing that through the platform?
The most basic of levels, no pun intended, making people aware on a daily basis that their health and well-being is the number one priority. Because everything else will take over you. Everything. Meetings, WhatsApp, emails, LinkedIn, traffic, school run, kids, everything. If you don't prioritize your well-being, no one else will do it for you. And if you don't do it, if you don't do the necessary, if you don't take care of yourself, well, then you become a worse and worse and worse version of yourself. I don't know anyone who wants to be a worse version of themselves. If I did, I probably wouldn't carry on talking to them. So it's really on a simple premise. How do we be that constant companion, that constant reminder that, mate, take care of yourself, drink that water, stand up, sleep well, do the basics. If you can do more, brilliant. And we're here to push you further. But at the very least, take the basic measures to being your healthiest, happiest self, and everyone and everything will benefit off of that.
But after you raised the 10 million recently, did you not then find that pressure to get back and start doing those longer hours? You now have shareholders you have to take care of. You have, different types of pressures that you have to deal with on a business side. How did you manage those expectations where stakeholders have now just grown? You have a responsibility on that side.
Yeah.
How were you able to, or are you able to balance that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I cannot be the CEO of a health tech company if I'm not taking care of my health and well-being. It would be the biggest kind of hypocrisy known to man. So yeah, I have to practice what I preach. I've, over time, and even during that process, become fitter, stronger, healthier, sleeping better than I ever have done, sleeping more than I ever have done. And, as a result, decision making is better. I think I've progressed as a leader. And yeah, you have to prioritize, your health and well-being, particularly as a leader and particularly as the CEO of a startup or a growth business, because you have to make constantly the best decisions you can.
Yeah.
And if you're not well rested, if you're not in good health and a happy, positive state of mind and being, then you simply will not. You'll start making bad decisions or errors of judgment, and I don't get everything right. And I think that there's just to be clear, it's a case of how do I get myself into the best possible state to do the best I can, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm always going to get things right. And I've definitely gotten plenty of things wrong over the time, but equally I then have the ability to acknowledge it and learn. To your point around stakeholder management, ultimately they've invested in Level not just because of me, but because of the brand that we've built, the team that we've built, the board that we've built, the clients, the member base that we've built. So that collective output of a lot of work by a lot of people, but we've been able to do that because of a certain culture that we've built and a belief and value set. That's not going to change. And if we had investors that came in that wanted us to change, then we would have to find a way to part ways, because you can't change who you are because someone else tells you to do something differently. Like, if people are raising money, and if we talk a little bit about raising money, you should really try and find investors who believe in the vision, who believe in the long-term play. Because if you're bringing on, too much of a short-term mindset, particularly in the tech space, particularly in this region where there's not many benchmarks, right? There's not many benchmarks of technology businesses that have come before you and succeeded. There's probably a lot that have come before you and failed, but not many that have come before you and succeeded. You have to have the right investors who understand that and are there for the ride. And, we're fortunate that we've got plenty of those. And yeah, I think if it wasn't for those, individuals, we certainly wouldn't be here today.
Okay. So we're coming towards the end of our conversation. However, in every podcast, we have this short segment where I'm going to just throw kind of 4 questions to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing that comes to your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just throw that back to me.
Yep.
So your most powerless moment.
In the process of raising capital, you always want to believe what people are telling you. You always want to believe that the other side has good intentions and is acting in good faith. Sadly, that's not always the case. And I would say one of the most powerless moments is when we went through 12 months of due diligence with a particular fund. They continuously changed the goalposts. In reality, I don't think they'd actually raised their own capital, and that is a problem here in this part of the world. And yeah, ultimately, because we had acted in good faith on our side and completed all of the due diligence and jumped through every hoop that they put in front of us, only to realize that, these guys aren't actually serious. Wasting 12 months and being in a very bad place financially was almost the ruining of the business. And, at that point, you just think, wow, we're so far down here. Like, what way up is there? Like, is there even a way back up? And yeah, it was a long climb back up, but yeah, that was a particularly dark moment in the Level journey.
Okay. Greatest fear.
Honestly, my greatest fear is not being able to complete this journey. If we're not able to raise capital in the future, if it's not even someone else beating us to it in the health and wellness space. Like this market, there's so much room for growth. I just want to make sure that Level has the absolute time horizon that it needs to be here and have the impact on people, not just in the region, but be one of the only homegrown regional brands that can become truly global, from a technology perspective. So yeah, the fear would be that we don't get to realize that goal.
Greatest comeback.
Well, yeah, from that deep dark place, after 12 months of running around in circles, responding to the most ludicrous of due diligence requests, we ended up plucking up the courage to walk away. And it sounds stupid. There was no courage needed because there was never a deal there in the first place, but we were just led to believe that there was. So, after 12 months of that rubbish, we were able to get connected. Graham made a connection in Singapore. He introduced us to Multiply Group, who then went on to be the lead investor in our Series A, $10 million Series A round. So that was an incredible comeback. In reality, we shouldn't have come back from that. And in COVID, when COVID hit, that really killed the business model overnight, and we probably shouldn't have come back from then either. So we've come back, at least twice in the journey, and there's probably other examples as well.
So what inspires you?
Two things. One, the people in Level, the people who work so passionately and diligently towards creating a product and a community and a platform for people to take better care of themselves. Like, having that impact is inspiring. And having built something that, now, our product team, our engineering team, our commercial team, like they drive this forward, and it's no longer just me. And then it's our clients and it's our members. Like that's inspiring. The fact that so many people want to take better care of themselves and are committed to it, that's inspiring. So that's number one. And number two is my boys. I think as you go through life and priorities change, and just seeing them grow up and seeing them grow up together, and having the privilege of being able to be around to see a lot more than what my dad was able to do, because he worked in that environment where he would go off at 8 a.m. and come back at 7, 8 at night and bring paperwork home, and then have to finish that after dinner. And he didn't get to spend as much time at home, and he absolutely wanted to, but it was a very normal way of working back then. And thanks to COVID, and remote working and work from home and flexible working, I'm privileged to be able to spend more time with my boys. And they're just they are the ultimate motivation and inspiration.
So just before we finish off, what's that one message? If there's some young entrepreneur who's on the fence whether they should take that leap of faith into the unknown, they don't know their destiny, they're trying to find it out, they don't even know what destiny is in some respect.
Yeah.
What do you, as somebody who stepped into that unknown and uncomfortable place again and again and again, 20 years on, what's that one piece of advice that you can give them that you think could potentially change their life?
It would be I would encourage people to not look at others or not listen to others even, but find a direction, get an idea of a direction you would like to go in and build your own path. You may not believe in destiny, you may not have any power, but that doesn't matter, because you can create your own destiny. And in that process, you will become more in control, more confident, more powerful. And through that, you will develop opportunities. You will get some wins on the board. And most importantly, you will fail, or you will get things wrong along the way, and that will give you character, that will give you strength. But the most important thing is you find a direction in the first place, and you go with it. You're not afraid to step into that unknown and that discomfort. And the most important thing is actually to learn to appreciate and like that discomfort, because it will ultimately make you a bigger, stronger, more experienced and developed, complete person.
Gary, thank you so much for coming on to the episode, taking your time out, sharing so much of your experience. I know that we could have gone on for much longer.
I'm sure we could have done,
but thank you very much again, and I'm sure that everybody who listens to this is going to be wishing you well and watching what you're doing with the business, and wishing you well for sure.
Thanks, Ax. Great to be here.
Thank you.